and welcome to Sunrise Daily, live here from our Abuja studios. I'm Kayla Megwa.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Good morning and welcome. Well, today is Thursday. It's the 26th day in the month of September, if memory serves me right. So, Kayla, where are you taking us this morning?
Yes, you're correct. Well, we are going to a place that we love. We are moving to Niger State. And we are looking at this very famous rock this morning and getting to know more about it. What happened in this place? What's the story of Zuma Rock? Well, it's a very interesting place to be, really, and gives you just a sense of God's majesty, really. That's what Zuma Rock does, for me at least. Really serene atmosphere. You don't hear cars when you're around Zuma Rock. It's just peaceful, really peaceful, very calm. And just the majesty of this rock. I know we've talked about this before, Ayo. And what this place means to so many people. Of course, there's a resort not too far from here. The weather there, at least right now, is 26 degrees Celsius. And it's a 39-minute drive from Abuja, the largest natural monolith, or Inselberg, an indigenous intrusion that is composed of gabbro, granodiorite, and is located in Madala, there in Niger State. And of course, a tourist attraction. Many hikers like to go to this place. A lot of people who see Zuma Rock or hear about it have just never been there. So I would like to call on you right now. Take your time out and go. It's pretty safe around Zuma Rock, pretty safe. At least the last time I was there was pretty safe, but take some security if you can. There is security around the place as well. But of course, there's talk about a lot of criminal elements, maybe in the adjoining town of Madaland and things like that. But just so you can get a feel of what it is that we're talking about, you should make your way there to Zuma Rock. Go to the resort. So they're not paying us for this ad, but you should go and just enjoy nature and stay. You'll be shocked at how loud the city center is. If you live in Abuja, you don't know that you're constantly inundated by the sounds of cars and the horns honking and people yelling. When you go to this place, there is a calmness that comes on your spirit. I was almost disappointed to come back into town, Ayo. But yeah, that's our skyline this morning. Ayo, what are your thoughts? Apart from a movie, of course. Because I know you're going to go there. I can just see a movie.
Well, no, really. If you've seen a number of movies by this guy, Tom Cruise, you know that this is the kind of place you would want to make a movie. And
you want to jump down from it.
Stuntsmen, they will do wonders, here. And then there is another interesting thing. Occasionally I just like to use technology for funny things. So I just asked technology now, what do you know about ChatGPT, about Zuma Rock? It says it has a human face on it. Do you see a human face somewhere?
It does.
Okay. So
yeah, it is.
You did tell us that earlier.
It's a myth. It's a legend. It's a legend. I don't know if I can call it a human face. There are people who worship this rock, by the way.
Wow.
There are people who worship this rock. And there's, I don't want to call it a human face, but people call it a human face somewhere on the side of the rock. And there's a lot of spirituality. The people of, actually the tribe is the Koro people, right? So the chief of the Koro people actually serves as the priest of the rock's deity. And this deity is actually associated with a small rock within the village where sacrifices are being, people do sacrifices in that village. And the inhabitants of this forest village protect the rock, preventing outsiders from reaching it, There was a prevailing belief that no person had ever reached the rock base due to superstitions and fear of a curse, There's so much that has been said about it. Some people say they sacrifice oxen, goats, a black dog to the guardians of the rock. So yeah, there's the Koro people in Abuja are the ones who live in this area. So there'll be a lot of mysticism around the rock.
Well, and as for being able to climb it or not, believe me, if we indeed decide and take away all the myths around it, and we indeed decide to draw attention to it in terms of tourist potential. Trust me, it'll be a place people want to climb just for the sense of achieving something. 20,000 plus feet above ground level, that indeed is something. Well, it's a beautiful site for anyone. If you are thinking of something daring, why not try Zuma Rock? You will indeed have a very memorable one. So, what's happening today, Kayla?
Well, we have some business going on. And when I saw the headline, I was like, this. All of us are in this on this table. We need to understand it. So the business happening today we have is understanding Nigeria's crude production. Yes. How can we understand this crude production? I want to understand it as well. Ayo, do you understand Nigeria's crude production?
Well, one thing that I think we may have considered mystic over time is to think that when we talk about crude production in Nigeria, we talk about just one individual or one entity. The answer is no. There are people who have what they call, oil fields, and these individuals are part of the crude production, crude mining, if I can call it that, process. All these things that we extract from all over the place. Everyone is part of this process. Everyone that is an oil field owner or someone who has these are the people in the entire value chain of crude production in Nigeria. So if we are not doing as many barrels of crude as we should be doing, I guess it'll be part of the process. But what do I know, really? I'm just a bloody presenter. But on the top of the hour, 10 o'clock this morning, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, will be giving us all the details.
I mean, me too. What do we know? We're just presenters. What do we know? All right, well, it's time for you to take us through the newspaper headlines this morning.
Can you guess what the major issues in the news today are? One of them is certainly the cabinet reshuffle of the Tinubu administration at the federal level is certainly one. Daily Independent. Anxiety grows among ministers as presidency confirms looming sack. Says FG to use TED funds allocation to fund student loans. Won't intervene in NNPCL Dangote refinery petrol price war. The details of that story you'll find on the inside pages. The Nigerian News Direct is talking about the same thing. Cabinet reshuffle. Tinubu to rejig cabinet based on ministers' performance. Stories on page 2. Expression mounts for accountability within administration amid delivery scrutiny. More of that story you'll find on the inside pages. This Nigeria newspaper has Tinubu to sweep out deadwood ministers. Presidency confirms plans to rejig cabinet. This could lead to shoving aside officials who haven't pulled their weight after more than 1 year in office. And that only picture on the front page is of Justice Kudirat Kekereekun taking a bow at the Senate chamber after screening as the substantive Chief Justice of Nigeria in Abuja yesterday. Also on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, same story, shake-up. 11 ministers, senior official may go as Tinubu reshuffles cabinet. Details of that story on page 6. Still on the president, the front page of the Nigerian Tribune has fuel price. Tinubu won't intervene in Dangote NNPCL TIF. As according to presidency, confirms cabinet reshuffle imminent. Says 30% TED fund resources will go to student loan support. Unveils plans to introduce NIN registration for foreigners. The New Telegraph newspaper has presidency. FG won't intervene in NNPC Limited Dangote refinery fuel pricing controversy. Confirms imminent cabinet reshuffle. Oil theft. NNPC Limited. Others uncover 161 illegal refineries and pipelines. What do you make of that? Well, the details you'll find on pages 3 and 8 of the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. If you look at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, it's a rather concerning story. Panic in 11 states as release of water from Lagdo Dam begins. And look at the riders. States activate measures to mitigate impact of flooding, set up IDP camps. confusion, tales of hardship as relocation order comes into effect as some communities refuse to obey. That's to be expected, isn't it? But it's about lives, isn't it? Look at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. Hardship. Civil servants go to work twice a week. And someone said even feeding is difficult. Find the details on the inside pages. Only Lagos, Ogun, Osun approve off days. We pretend we don't know what's happening. That's from a director. It'll lead to low productivity. That's according to an analyst. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the paper today. The Daily Times newspaper. Africa's role as raw mineral supplier solidifying its misery. That's coming from the president. Says extracting raw materials without processing locally deepens continent's underdevelopment. Details on page 2 of the paper. Blueprint newspaper. As CGN, I'll be remembered for integrity, zero tolerance for corruption. That's coming from the new CGN, Kekiriakun. Warns judicial officers against frivolous ex parte orders, injunctions. Seeks end to pre-election matters at appeal court. The details continue on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Business Day newspaper. Nigeria to widen tax net over revenue shortfall. Taps 30% of TET fund income to fund NEL fund to deploy tax tools to drive jobs exports. The details of that story is right there on the front page, and it continues on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And these are some of the papers we have for you today.
Quite a number of stories there to look at in the newspapers this morning. But what's piqued my interest is this headline from the Guardian newspaper. In fact, we've been talking about this particular headline for quite a bit. Even before we came on air, a lot of people were actually just sitting down and talking about it. So let's start off with the Guardian newspaper. If we can have that newspaper up there for people to see what the headline is. From the Guardian, 11 ministers and senior officials may go as Tinubu reshuffles cabinet. We'll see more on that from page 6 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. I want everyone to be a part of this conversation, actually, if you can. From your experience as being a Nigerian and looking at what's been happening in the different ministries and parastatals in the country, maybe you want to talk to us and let us know what you think the president should do. In this cabinet reshuffle, of course, Mr. Bayo Nanuga spoke about it yesterday. In this cabinet reshuffle that is being planned, we've been wondering when it would happen. Will it happen? What kind of review is going on? What are the results of that review? Well, while we wait on the answers to those questions, maybe you should pick up a copy of The Guardian and let us know, either on YouTube. A lot of you like to chat with us on YouTube. You can send us a message on YouTube. You can actually send us an email, talk to us on X at Sunrise Daily Now. You know, tag all of us. Let us know, what ministers do you think should be given the boot? Who hasn't been doing his bit, you know? And I heard yesterday, you know, when they said, you know, talk to the Nigerian people. That's what the president said to these ministers. Talk to the Nigerian people. Let them hear what it is that you have been doing. A friend of mine giggled and said, we're about to be inundated with interviews. It's possible, but you should have made those interviews earlier. Those interviews should have been coming earlier. A lot of people didn't want to speak, you know. But, you know, the cabinet reshuffle, the one from the headline, 11 ministers, senior officials may go as Tinubu reshuffles his cabinet. Page 6 has more on that, and the pictures of some people on the front page of The Guardian. I want to be able to give you the details, but I won't. Get yourself a copy. Ayo, what are you looking at this morning?
Well, I really don't know where to pitch my tent this morning, Kayla. I won't even deceive myself, because, you know, the issues on the front pages they are kind of repetitive. That conversation, that issue of ministers being shuffled is something that we've been talking about for a while. The question you want to ask is, how significant has that been in the entire space of things? Now, we understand from what you also said that one of the president's appointees is the one in charge of the KPIs of the ministers in the past 1 year. So the question then is, how much politics, is going to influence, or politicking is going to influence the decision of the president. And when I heard that story yesterday, I said to myself, oh gosh, the horse trading is going to start now. And then the people who are going to whisper something into the president's ears are going to say something and all of that. So how much horse trading is going to happen? How much political value or not is going to influence the decision of the president? I guess we'll wait to see, right? We'll just wait and let the president make up his mind about that. But there is something very important that the president also talked about, and that is what you will find on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning, talking about Africa's role as raw material supplier solidifying its misery. Now, what's instructive on the front page of the Daily Times is the rider. It says, extracting raw materials without processing locally deepens the continent's underdevelopment. Now, just take one instance, Kayla and dear viewer. One instance, cocoa. We make cocoa here in Nigeria. We plant them, we harvest them, and guess what we do? We export them to other parts of the country, to other parts of the world, Switzerland and the rest of them. And guess what we get back? We get processed chocolates from them, way more expensive than it ever would have been here. And you're wondering why, these things are expensive. And that's just one of several, instances. What is wrong with us being able, God helping us, to process, to scale up our capacity to be a producing nation and export these things ourselves? And that, as I said, that's just one. There's also a raw material called gum arabic. It's here in Nigeria in abundance. As far back as about 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, there was an international gum arabic conference held in this country. And it's an extremely valuable mineral resource. And rather than kill ourselves over what's happening in Zamfara and other parts of the country, there are so many other minerals that we are blessed with in hundreds. So can we just do ourselves a favor and take the president's advice, starting from Nigeria, and rather than kill ourselves over the raw materials that we have, actually maximize them, add value to them? It's one of the cardinal objectives of the president. Add value, value-added production. That is one of his focal points. I guess we'll see in the next 1-2 years what happens to this comment that the president has made. That and a number of other things you'll find interesting. Now, we're getting into our conversation, the rest of our conversation this morning. But before we do that, let's take a few messages. Let's jump right into the conversation with Dr. Idika Kalu, who is a former Minister of Finances, joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for your time today. Can you hear me, sir? Dr. Kalu, can you hear me, sir? Well, we'll certainly be hearing him any moment from now. But just so you know, those who will be wondering, who is Dr. Kalu? Well, Dr. Kalu was the country's Minister of Finance at different times during military and civilian regimes in this country. He's a renowned economist. He's also been a renowned, public servant, and he's widely regarded for his expertise in economic policies that has had a notable career both within and outside Nigeria. And a number of things. By the way, he's also been besides being Minister of Finance, he's also been at various times Minister of National Planning and Minister of Transport in the country. We'll be hearing a little more from him in a short while. By the way, to also let you know that he is, well, Dr. Kalu, can you hear me now, sir?
Well, I can hear you. It's a little bit too loud.
Okay. We'll adjust that.
Just tune it down.
Yeah, we'll adjust that right now, sir.
So
we'll adjust that. Thank you, sir. Well, Perhaps, the first thing we want to ask you is, there are those who have been calling for, thankfully you're also, part of the Patriots. There are those who have been wondering how significant is the place of a new constitution to national or economic development. From your experience as a public servant, how significant is that?
Well, it is very significant. If the constitutional changes are meant to ensure that the full economy is functioning administratively, in terms of sharing of the burden of security, resource mobilization, deployment of people across the large areas of this country. So it should always be assumed that clamor for a change in constitution, like the Patriots and other stakeholders have been pushing for, it just stands to reason that there is a direct relationship.
Well, there are those who also wonder, in the line of whether or not it is significant, that sometimes the problem is not in the laws, but in the operators of the laws. An instance given frequently is that the Constitution, as we have it now, is very clear on the functions of the local government systems and the functions of the common purse of the state governors and the local government administrations. But there are those who believe that even despite that constitutional provision, the governors have continually eroded on the finances meant for the local government, irrespective of that constitutional provision. So sometimes they say it's not a function of the laws or the Constitution, but the people who are operating them. What's your take on that?
Well, I agree to a very large extent with that. In a way, you can say this is a chicken and egg problem once again. The leadership, obviously, is paramount. You cannot tailor-made a structure for all time or for all circumstances. So that's where it's so proper that those who assume leadership, the system by which they get there, the system by which we monitor them and oversee, whether through the judiciary or the legislature, and of course, most importantly, by the direct, the people themselves directly, who are ultimately the sovereignty, or who hold the sovereignty of the realm. Yes, the structure is important. The structure provides, hopefully, a guideline that can stand for some time, so you don't have to be tinkering with it every other time. But there's no question that the tone of what happens thereafter depends on how that structure truly reflects the ownership of the people, their aspirations, and the kind of hopes and dreams that they have. That is why the Constitution is so significant. But I also agree that whatever you fashion, the quality of those who go through the system to implement, of course, is very, very significant. So the two issues, it's not a zero-sum sort of thing. There's a direct relationship. One contributes to the other, and we should not try to discuss the two aspects in isolation. They have to be taken up in tandem. So the two angles to this are quite correct,
Well, there is also the question of accountability, Dr. Kalu. There are those who wonder whether or not, in spite of the provisions of the Constitution about accountability and all those things, it would seem like it's either not significant enough or not existent enough, or the structures are not strong enough to take on the individuals who are being unaccountable. So in terms of constitutional review and everything, speak first of all to the accountability element. Do we have a system, even laws, that hold governments at various levels, federal, state, or local, to account, particularly in the area of our development and all of it that they hold on behalf of the nation?
Well, this is a very critical question. Over so many occasions in the past, I've had to look at the issue, the strange issue that we copied our system, primarily from the United States system. The United States system has explicitly an office of accounting. Well, it works in the US. The Americans would not say it's absolutely perfect, but the structure is there. With all the things we borrowed from their constitution, we seem to have left that out. I'm not suggesting, of course, that we didn't institute others. We've set up all kinds of instrumentalities, all kinds of committees, provisions, legal structures to make sure that there's accountability from the local government to the state to the federal. But I think any observer, any honest observer will go along with your question that it begs the question whether, in fact, we have oversight, we have accountability, we have causes and effect, we have consequences for violating the rules, even the rudimentary ones that we have. So once again, we're talking about a chicken and egg issue, whether it is the kind of leadership that gets to be subjected to the accounting system, or the fact that the accounting system itself is not strong enough or explicit enough or legally strong enough to hold people to check. So again, there are two sides to the question, and they should be discussed together. This is a very major question. I think the citizenry at every level has been asking these questions. How do we get so much money to seep out of the system? How do we get so many stories to sort of die the minute they hit the headlines? How do we get a situation where nobody seems to have any memory for what has gone wrong, and they need to always go back and make sure that the citizen who will be called upon to sacrifice, pay tax, who are entitled by the endowment of their resources, continually get shortchanged because people are not being monitored to make sure that what is budgeted reflects what is needed, and what is spent can be seen as what has been put into the projects for which they have been implemented. You can go through so many levels of this issue. So like every other issue, we need to focus on this problem.
So from what you have said now, does that suggest that we have individuals who are stronger than institutions?
Well, this happens in every system, obviously. Some leaders are more listening. Some leaders have their own personal moral code. Some leaders have their own sense of responsibility to their electorate. Some leaders have a different sense of continuity, where you can come back and face the tune when people come and assess how you function. So, you know, for obvious reasons, the quality of the leadership and all these other aspects that I've just listed will delimit the extent to which that sense of accounting becomes a very important part of the checks and balances that should be in the system. So this is something just as important as the Constitution, as the legal structure, as the oversight structures at the National Assembly, the various party structures, for instance, even within the political parties. So all these other institutions are meant to ameliorate and more or less remove those that are purely arising from differential personalities in terms of their strength of character, their moral code, I said, their own personal moral principles, their sense of accountability, whether in the home or in the church or in other areas. When you get such people who are now faced with maybe weighty issues of the state in terms of both quantum and quality, they bring their different personalities to bear, and then we have this sense of impunity, continuing impunity, and a sense of not listening, which of course the electorate gets a hang of and cannot be very happy about it. This happens every time. So again, whatever one says there, it's all a matter of looking back and see how it applies to previous administration. But we're supposed to be learning from our past. So we don't expect to be coming back to the same issue over and over and over again.
And it's a sad one, because I imagine that you sometimes look back and wonder, how did we get here? So now, with all of these that you said, you've raised issues around accountability, you've raised issues around impunity, you've raised issues around individuals tending to be stronger than institutions. How does a new constitution address these issues?
Well, the way a new constitution addresses these issues, of course, is in various ways. First of all, our system of government, we are not disputing the federal structure. We are not disputing the bicameral structure, except perhaps in terms of how it's too expensive for our resources at times. What we are disputing is how the institution, the constitution itself, will reflect the powers, the strengths, if you like, the responsibilities, the fiscal and monetary responsibilities, particularly the fiscal. Let's leave out the monetary for a minute. The fiscal responsibilities. So through the Constitution, you can explicitly review this and use the benefit of hindsight and present circumstances to now redraw it. It is absolutely the right of the people. This issue that arises where we begin to have a pro and con, those who want it reviewed, those who want it reviewed, this should not arise. It's absolutely the right of the citizens or their representatives. When they feel there's some measure of divergence, distortion, or getting off the rails, if you like, they have every right to say, let's sit down and review these things. If we do it properly, we should not be doing it too often, and we should not be doing it in a wholesale fashion, like you are throwing out the whole baby with the bathwater. You're just selecting those areas that have not been functioning as they should in the interest of the peace and stability and orderly development of the country. Those should be, over time, become less and less. The American Constitution, they've had over 13 major amendments over hundreds of years. That is the kind of thing we are talking about. Again, that goes back to the sheer quality of the electoral process, the political party process. In fact, it goes back to all the mores of society, the education, the cultural values, the if you like, the way people are brought up in various institutions. They bring this to bear when they get positions in power, and they can see where their responsibilities spring from and where their alliance should be. The issue of accounting to the people who elected them, the issue of strict stewardship of the funds that have been, scarce funds that have been allocated to carry out definite functions. And we can see how we have strayed away. During our own time, I might say, I was not really the kind of legislative politician. We came in under military and so on and so forth. So you can say things are much more specific. But there is no question that you had a duty to follow the principles, the general orders of the civil service, and so on and so forth. And there was a structure in place. We've set up committees to review salaries and all these things. Those are some of the areas I find are a clear aberration from what we work with, because we didn't have such things. These were constituted and properly looked at. You just didn't come around taking ratios and practices from other realms that are quite distinct from your own. And you end up creating a situation that is somewhat top-heavy for the resource quantity and the growth of those resources. So these are some of the areas that clearly need to be reviewed. The question of the responsibility to a cabinet, however constituted, is a cabinet. They make a decision based on their perception of the priorities of the society. These days we hear so much about, I don't know what the people are able to attract to their constituency, so-called constituency projects. In my humble opinion, those are the issues that we really need to examine very thoroughly. We don't need people telling us they attracted this, they attracted that. We need governance at every level that can correctly identify the priorities of their immediate constituencies, the local government, the state government, of course, the overall federal government, pick the priorities, implement them as to the letter, and not this tendency to let unfinished projects sort of scatter the entire landscape. So it is the responsibility of the cabinet to set priorities through studied discussions and debate, open debate in which the citizenry can be involved with, open hearings and so on and so forth. So those are some of the elements that will improve the working of the Constitution. And I think, as I said, if the people feel that we have strayed too far in implementing the Constitution, then we need to review it and find out the reasons why we have done that. It should be a very healthy, periodic, hopefully not too often, but it's certainly a responsibility of all arms of government. The people, the legislative, the executive, and of course the judiciary.
Well, I mean, I have so many issues to raise from the questions. So many questions come to me from the issues that you have raised. But let me quickly piggyback on one of them, which you just talked about now, which is the issue of constituency projects. What exactly do you think of that idea? There are those who are wondering, the legislators, for instance, are saying, look, this is the one way that people will know that they are the ones that, did this for their community. What's your take on that idea of constituency projects since this Fourth Republic began? Well,
the idea itself may seem quite normal and nothing abhorrent, but the way it's been handled, the way the decisions are taken, the way in the end you see the stacking of the priorities for a whole community. There again, we're talking about strong leadership. It goes again to strong representation. But by the time you bring it to a collective cabinet level decision, all these things will be sort of ironed out. Okay. And the people have a right to feel that those who head these cabinets at all levels, state, local, federal, are taking cognizance of the overall priorities. The overall priorities tell you about what the community needs, what the community can do with reference to the resources available, because the resources are not available for all the projects, as laudable as they may be. And the assurance that once you've taken some priority because of how it keys into the overall development of the specific area, the next time you pick another, and the kudos, if you like, goes to the leadership, to the cabinet, and not necessarily to any particular individual. But in the course of getting these priorities, of course, the individual brings to bear their ability to perceive what the needs, what the major needs of the various communities are. That's what the debates are for. That's what the open hearings are for. But it should not be where you are trying to show off that you are so strong, you grab most of the budget for your own community and somebody else is not able to do so for all kinds of reasons. So they are not bad ideas in themselves, but the way we have operated them, particularly the way we have tried to now allocate fiscally the resources to implement these projects, leaves a whole lot to be desired. That's what I'm saying. So I think that the whole idea needs a review.
Well, perhaps one of the issues is that of impact. And
yes,
the idea, the things that's affected people the most, that's impacted people's lives the most these times is the cost of living. And it goes to the policies of government, the fiscal policies, the monetary policies and all. Of course, you are not unaware of the new rates from the CBN. What exactly do you think is going on? It seems like the MPC just has seen a ladder and it's just climbing. What's your take on it? How functional is it? How productive is it? And how futuristic is it? How sustainable is it on the pockets of Nigerians?
Well, once again, just about any major question is so critical to the present and future, if you like, of our fortunes. Now, we've hyped these monetary policy committees and so on. We are hyping them with cognizance to how these are operating in London or in New York and what have you. But you know that the system depends on the structure we have in place. the financial system, the spread of the financial system, the coverage of that system to all nooks and crannies of our large country. 200 million plus people in villages and small towns, in localities, small towns, cities, and so on and so forth. So whatever rates you adjust may seem fine, and I'm not suggesting they are not fine. I saw the broad objectives: to tighten money, to curb inflation, perhaps to also reduce undue pressure on the exchange rate. Already, early indications suggest that far from the exchange rate improving, it's as even in most of the now reduced market sources, even increased the naira dollar rate in terms of the sort of depreciation of the naira with respect to, say, the dollar. So, and some of these changes that may seem counterintuitive, deriving from the otherwise properly tested theory, goes to show how much coverage, how much does the interest rate, how much does the exchange rate actually reflect the cubicles of demand. Some of them are just not really interconnected because of the sheer structure of our market. The structure is not evenly connected for all kinds of reasons: communications, transport, direct supervision, and so on and so. In fact, just even official representation of branches of banks and so on and so forth. So whatever we do at the monetary policy thing, we must also adjust with respect to what effectiveness it will have on the entire system. I know this sounds very, very complicated, but at that level, this is the work that the CBN and the monetary authorities should continually be doing. This is part of the monitoring of the banks by the central monetary authorities to see how, if you like, the penetration of monetary instruments into the entire system, into agricultural areas, into manufacturing hubs, into the transport system, just about every sector of the economy. There has to be that penetration, so that you have a little bit of more assurance that whatever minute changes that you make on the interest rate, you can almost correctly rate how it will impact on the real sectors and the financial sectors.
All right. Well, so many questions to ask you, and I think Kayla has some for you as well.
Dr. Kalu, listening to some of the things that you said right now, I want to be able to get your thoughts, really, as former Minister of Finance, on, what this government is doing. And let me be able to explain that properly. We're looking at a situation where we have a rising inflation, we have rising unemployment, and then we're seeing a standard of living that is dropping constantly. As former Minister of Finance, looking at the policies of the Tinubu administration right now, we keep hearing them talk about how these are the hard choices that have to be made while we get ready for a better future. Are these the policies to get Nigerians into this better future? Is there something good coming in the future, in your view? Or are we playing a game that could actually backfire?
Not playing a game. The situation is too dangerous. The situation is... Yes, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, indeed.
I said, I hope this is more than a game. Or, in fact, I think we are in such a serious situation, we should not even talk in terms of a game. We've had to consider so many policies over the last 40 years. A lot of those policies, well, as you say, I was in finance twice. By the time I came back the second time into finance in the early 90s, we were still grappling with some of those policies that we tried to enunciate in the mid-80s, or you can even say in the early 80s, since I returned from my stint at the World Bank. So one has had a fair acquaintance with the genesis of some of the things we're still talking about. It could not be a game. It is absolutely important that we know that the only basis for judging our policies in any static or dynamic sense is the import, the direct impact of these policies on the general living of our people. People in agriculture, people in manufacturing, people in mining, people in the important oil and gas sectors, people in the arts, people in the infrastructures, the entire economy. So it cannot be a game. So policies have to be taken very seriously. I have had occasion to address some of these issues. I don't want to be raising fresh issues with every question, but let's just go back to the subsidy issue. Well, obviously, as I said over and over again, I wrote about this back in the 80s. You see, if subsidies were not liable to abuse, liable to overuse, and liable to being non-cost effective by the sheer quantum of how it impacts on the budget and on the efficiency in the resource allocation, nobody will be using it. But as I also said, nothing is inherently negative about the introduction of subsidies. These are still happening in Russia, in America, in Argentina, in France, and so on and so forth. Again, it goes to the question of economic leadership. The leadership has to be those who are easily persuaded about how they can put together a whole amalgam of these instrumentalities that will address the current structure of the economy and impact positively on changing it to a better place. So we should not just say we don't know where we are going. Those in charge should know where we are going, and they should be constantly reviewing. We just talked about whether that constancy should include the Constitution, or is just really a question of leadership or number of ministers, number of committees, and so on and so forth, to get away from direct instruments like what is happening to the exchange rate or interest rate. So I think that we are in constant flux. One introduced the notion of that dynamic flux in policy change, and we talked about a term that we introduced in Korea in the mid-70s when the oil price hit Korea. That's how the whole idea of structural adjustment policies. There's nothing else to diminish. There's nothing sacrosanct or static about the contents or the concept of that structural change to reflect new changes in priorities, new changes in competitiveness for the economy. When you are being faced with different terms of trade and external conditions and domestic factors. So we have to continue to review these policies. My impression was, of course, was that because of the sheer number of areas we needed to look at, this could be one way of justifying a fairly large cabinet. So you are in fact getting people to hone in on particular areas, such as having about 12 or 15 and lumbering them with sub-areas within the same ministry. But you can also overdo that. We can also overdo that.
I mean, Dr. Kalu, you know,
yes.
while we're talking about, you know, everything that's going on with Nigeria's economy, for many people, especially people from my generation, all we can see is that there's excessive spending in governance. If you can cut that down, you know, you can use money for other things, you know, that could help us get to where we are. And for many people who are looking at this administration right now, it does feel like, you know, it feels like they're trying out things, you know, it doesn't feel like we're actually moving towards something. They say we are, but it doesn't feel like we are. And I'm just talking as someone who's a millennial. This is how we're looking at our country right now and wondering where the future is going to be. My question to you is, if you had the ear, if you had their ear, this administration's ear, what would you be telling them to do? Because like you said, the only way to measure whatever policies you're proposing is impact. If you had their ear right now, what would you be telling them to do differently that could actually impact us properly and make our lives better as Nigerians?
Well, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I should have their ear because I know the major people in this situation. But as I said, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I've made myself available. And I think a lot of my colleagues at the same level will make themselves available because we're all working for the same purpose. I know in the early 80s, traveling to some of our neighbors, even those who've served twice or three times before in various capacities. There's a system by which you can talk to them and get the benefit of their views privately. At least this should serve to cut down the extent to which, if you like, we stray from the path, you know. Now, let me just address the question of too much spending. You see, we have put in policies that resulted in a much more rapid depreciation of our currency. That rapid depreciation gives rise to what I had mentioned earlier today, I think, the whole notion of money illusion. The fact that you are talking about trillions. No, I'm coming to your question. So, you see, if the issue is just a numerical quantum of spending, remember, spending, the issue, first and foremost, should be before you spend, you have to rationalize how you spend. If you are spending a lot and the benefits are coming a lot, nobody will quarrel about that. You are spending a lot on water, you are spending a lot on roads, you are spending a lot on railways, you are spending a lot on farm support and so on, and you are getting a commensurate return for the spending. So that's what we have to put in context. I'm not saying the general feeling that, oh, a lot of money is being spent. But underlying that is the fact that people are not so clear on the effectiveness, the marginal contribution of the extra funds that are going into the government treasury, which are now expended on all kinds of things. That is where the question also goes to. I hope you understand the definition. It's not just spending so much money.
We do have to start wrapping up, Dr. Kalu. We do have to start wrapping up. But before we go, many people actually looking at you, the structural adjustment program, which, you were very instrumental to creating back then. Many people say that these are some of the IMF policies that impacted negatively on our country.
That is a lot of rubbish. That's a lot of rubbish. And it's a function of the general conventional wisdom. I have tried to explain to you that the name by itself means nothing. The origin was from a society like Korea that depended on importing raw materials from Malaysia, Indonesia, Taiwan, and so on, to produce their large-scale, labor-intensive manufactures. When they were hit by the quadrupling of the oil price in the early 70s, they had to decide, what do? We don't just lie back and die. How do we maneuver out of the constellation of terms of trade issues that are coming up? That's the simple meaning of structural adjustment. The notion that this somehow sapped us and did this really goes to address, as I said, the quality of the content of our conventional wisdom. We did not take enough time to understand that this could have been called budget, this could have been called plan, it didn't have to be called SAP. SAP, structural adjustment, every nation has to face at different levels of income, with changes in technology, changes in your trade structure and direction, changes in your personnel, your training, and so on. How do you maximize the use of this new constellation of new issues to move ahead? But strangely enough, and for 40 years, we have hopelessly failed to understand a very simple concept, which has applied to every other country. How many countries are still talking about SAP, SAP, SAP? They probably have used other names that may be more appropriate if it's the name that matters. So I reject totally this continuing reference to how our problems arose from SAP and so on. The problem arose from our total misunderstanding, and it's about time. 40, 50 years later, we should be moving on. Call it by any other name. The issues are what's happening to our schools, what's happening to our hospitals, what's happening to our farmers, what's happening to our resource allocation at the various levels. Are we mobilizing to address the structures that produce for our people? Those are the issues that come under the issue of structure. And then you change this structure, you can call it by any other name. I hope after this program, we do have to
anchor there, Dr. Kalu. Your point has been made, and I want to thank you very much for making those points and talking with us this morning on Sunrise Daily. Dr. Kalu, Idika Kalu, former Minister of Finance. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
We'll go on a commercial break, and when we come back, it'll be time for Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We'll be back again at 10:30. Stay with us.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. This is where we do just about 30 minutes of business before we head back to the Sunrise Daily studio. I'm in John McQuarrie. We start normally from the global space, and that's what we're doing this morning. So we can tell you that oil prices were just a little bit changed on Thursday after falling in the previous session as signs of higher field demand and falling stockpiles in the United States, which is the world's biggest oil user, offset concerns over demand elsewhere, particularly in China. We know China has been driving prices for about 3 days now. Let's look at the numbers. It's 9 cents that's added to Brent this morning. That's about 0.12%. Bring it up to $73.55. WTI at 0.06%, also up. That's about 4 cents. Bringing that, however, to below $70, $69.73 a barrel. So oil prices slumped about 2% yesterday, Wednesday, because of worries of disruption in Libya. And that ease. And then there was demand concerns in China after that big stimulus plan that they introduced earlier this week. And the signs of the return of Libyan oil to the market, that's also weighing on prices. The market shrugged off data that showed stronger demand in the United States as Energy Information Administration reported that U.S. inventories fell more than expected across board last week. We shared that number with you yesterday. Now we come back home and to the currency market to see what happened to the Naira yesterday. We did see an appreciation after the Central Bank of Nigeria intervened, and this time they did it through the BDCs, the Bureau, the Change, that's the parallel market. So we see that even though there was an appreciation at NAFEX, 0.33%, but normally we keep our eyes more on NAFEM, where it closed at 1,667 naira 42 kobo after it opened at 1,658 naira 48 kobo, lost more than 0.5% at the close of trade. So that's another worry that we've been seeing, a trend since last week Friday, where we've seen even when there's an intervention by the central bank, some money released into the market, we still see the Naira losing value. And Mr. Bismarck Rwani, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, has been talking about this. He says he believes it is because of the uncertainty in the intervention or the timeline of intervention expected from the central bank. Now, let's talk to him this morning and see perhaps he has found out something more about this. Mr. Rwani, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning and thank you for having me.
Great. So you've been saying that the reason we are seeing a drop in the value of Naira, in spite, we saw the CBN intervene on Friday, they intervened on Monday, they intervened yesterday again. And in spite of that, we still see continuous drop in the value of Naira. You're connecting this to the uncertainty to when the CBN will actually intervene. This knowledge, you say, is bringing uncertainty to the market. I don't know if you found out something new. Oh, it seems perhaps there's an internet glitch right there, because it seems Mr. Rwani is frozen on the screen, but I'm sure we'll get him back in a couple of seconds, hopefully. Yeah, but looking at what's happening in the value of the Naira, and then when we listened to Mr. Cardoso 2 days ago, MPC decision announcement, and when he was asked about his achievement or his work in 1 year, celebrating 1 year in office. We did hear, one of the things obviously is closing the gap between the parallel and the official market. So while that's commendable, when we look at the value of the Naira, the reintroduction of the Dutch auction system, well, it's receiving applause. But what about the value of the Naira? I think we have Mr. Rwani back. Mr. Rwani, can you hear us now?
Clearly.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was just saying that you've already expressed your thoughts on why you think the Naira keeps depreciating in spite of CBN intervention. Have you found out something new?
No, let me first of all, normally once a country increases its interest rates, the currency strengthens, because basically it becomes more expensive to get the local currency to buy the international currency. That's basic rule number one. So two things happen here. One, the US interest rates were dropped by 50 basis points, and Nigeria increased its own interest rate by 50 basis points. So technically speaking, the Naira should appreciate instantaneously against the dollar because the interest rate inflation differential has narrowed. But having said that, you must understand that a lot of people who are in the currency markets had an inventory of dollars. Two, a lot of people did not know, and there was no clarity as to when the next auctions will be. So what we are saying is that once the central bank announces that we will have periodic interventions, no matter what the frequency and the magnitude, the marketplace will take that into consideration. So initial reactions were negative because they want information. One of the characteristics of perfect markets is that if there's information, easy entry and exit, homogeneous commodity, the market becomes perfect and prices begin to decline. So in this case, I think the next credible step would be that the central bank would have to now begin to announce how it intends to intervene. Yes, there was some money sold to BDCs in the last day or two, but that's not going to cut it. You need a very deliberate and intentional strategy as to how to get the currency back. But having said that, I think that the Naira got to 1,700 yesterday. I think it begins to appreciate from today or tomorrow. You begin to see it will be sticky at about 1,700, and then it gradually begins to come down. But let's not deceive ourselves. A 50 basis point increase in interest rates is not going to salvage the Naira. It only means that it will appreciate marginally, and then gradually other things have to come into place. One, the debt service proportion, the fiscal activities of the government, and more than anything else, we must get the oil revenues back up by actually doing something about the vandalism in the Niger Delta.
Yeah, obviously the oil and gas sector is still the major driver of revenue and sustenance of the economy. But another worrying one, we've been talking about the threat of food insecurity. We have numbers, we have researchers and all of that, but the flood seems to bring another dimension to that, because now the United Nations is estimating that flood destroyed about 8.5 food for about 8.5 million Nigerians. So once again, a bleak Christmas is what we're seeing?
Yes. Well, to a large extent, a bleak Christmas, because we're counting on three things between now and Christmas. One, the import of commodities with the duty waiver program. Two, the harvest season. And three, the lower logistics costs. Now, with the floods, both in the northeast and to a large extent in the south, it means that we will lose part of the harvest. Two, it will be more difficult to move products from one market to the other. And three, even if you import the commodities, you will not be able to get it into the hinterland and the marketplaces. So this is bad luck, right? At times you have to be smart and be lucky. So this is bad luck for Nigeria, and it means that the inflation trajectory that we're expecting that will begin to decline in November and December may not materialize as earlier anticipated. Look at the domestic commodity prices. As of today, flour is up significantly to about 71,000 naira. Rice is up at 100,000 imported and 95,000, I understand, for domestically milled rice. Palm oil is down, and tomatoes is the big one that has actually come down to 22,000 naira a basket. So mixed bag there for commodities. Another thing that happened after the increase in interest rates was that normally, if you increase interest rates, the stock market declines because people move from equities to fixed income securities. We saw that happen yesterday. The day before yesterday, the market appreciated. Yesterday, it appreciated again because of surplus and other things. We think that today, the market will go down. And we also think that today, maybe the Naira will stabilize and begin to appreciate marginally. But the transmission effect of that into domestic prices will take some time to come. There will be a lot of anguish between now and the end of the year.
Yeah, well, we do hope. I know we started counting down 100 days like 2 days ago. So we do hope that those buffer that the federal government, the way that duty waiver and all of that will set in. So at least we'll have, a beautiful Christmas at the end of the year. But thank you so much, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani.
But there was one comment, though, Ini. There was something about the family office. There were some comments about the Dangote refinery. First and foremost, the products are coming out in the market. We'll have a new price in October. based on the naira oil concentration. But also, some people said Dangote is sort of a family office. Family offices are normal. So you have Gates family office, or Buffett family office, and all of those offices. I think it's important that we realize that separating the corporate identity from the personal identity, that is typical. And therefore, the focus is on when the refinery starts to produce, at what price, and we made it clear that we do not think that the price is going to decline anytime soon. If anything, the price is going to increase. But one thing, though, is that the uniform pricing across Nigeria is a thing of the past now. That therefore, the price in Maiduguri will not be the same thing as the price in Akure. Neither will it be the same thing as the price in Port Harcourt or in Sokoto, for that matter. So differential pricing and efficient pricing come in. Two, that the price of diesel, which today is at 1,180, begins to be a proxy for the price of petrol. Therefore, if you're paying 900 now, you have to get ready for the fact that you'll be paying 1,100 and something in a not too distant future. But however, because of the reduction in traffic, you'll find that even though the increase in price, you are spending less time in traffic, and maybe the amount of petrol you are burning is less than you were burning before. Is that any comfort for anybody who is paying for transport fare? No. I'm just putting the reality on the table that we should get ready for those increases as a part of this adjustment process. Thank God the youth corps allowance is now at 77,000, so that's the beginning of the soft landing for the Nigerian consumers.
Yeah, well, interesting there, Mr. Arwani, and I'm sure a lot of people want to know more about that pricing you're talking about. Is it the one decided by the Federal Executive Council? Is it the market price, between the private, the other stakeholders in the value chain buying from Dangote? I mean, but I guess I'll be putting you on the spot right here because you're neither in Dangote nor in NNPCL or even the government.
No, I think that the pricing, the value chain from when crude oil goes into Dangote refinery, when it is refined and when it's passed on to either the independent marketers or to NNPC, what we are seeing now is the early stages of a value chain that needs to be efficiently structured so that we will know that this is the price of crude internationally, this is the refining cost, the transportation cost is part of it, and then the final cost. But one thing is clear, that nobody is going to sell petrol or any commodity for that matter below their cost price. So what is the margin? The margin is determined between NNPC or the marketers and Dangote refinery. In any case, people have an option. If Dangote's refinery products are too expensive, then NNPC or the other marketers will import from other places. But there are also other refineries, modular refineries, and the government-owned refineries, which we are told will get back into operation very soon. They've been saying that for the past 3 years, but seeing is believing, as I say.
All right, Mr. Bismarck-Rawani, thank you so much for that information. I know that's a very useful one for Nigerians. Well, still talking about the oil and gas industry, our energy correspondent, Olu Philip, did have a sit-down with a member of the NNPCL. That the NNPCL has been under a lot of fire recently. Well, he spoke with the Chief Upstream Investment Officer of NNPCL, Upstream Investment Management Services, Mr. Balawunti. And, we have excerpts from that. You can get the full interview on our website, on our YouTube website. But just a bit of it is what we bring to you right here on Business Morning.
For allowing us this time in your space. Let's start by really asking you, really from the top, in view of what you represent and what this department represents and signifies in helping Nigeria's energy security quest, what really is that and those things that keep you awake to ensure that these ambitions are met?
NNPC have, for right now, meeting all its cash call obligations. I'm glad to say that no partner is being owed, any cash call. We are up to date. As a matter of fact, we are very proud that for the first time in a very long time, that cash call has not been part of what keep the GCO awake. That issue has been crossed and crossed for good. And we're looking forward to having significant improvement. As regard to your question, what kept me awake? I think, frankly, I have three important things that keep me awake. Number one is production. Number two is production. And number three is production. It's not perfect to see why production is a major element that keep me awake. This is because production of hydrocarbon in this country underpinned the strength of our energy security and the strength of our financial security, whether you look at it from a revenue perspective or from foreign exchange perspective.
From the dashboard where you're looking at, how do you help to clear from this conversation the doubts, the disbelief, the contemplation for those who still have a different perception as regards Nigeria's production level, Nigeria's forex income revenue, and of course the cash call for the upstream sector, which is also the lifeblood of this nation's oil and gas industry?
So again, the data is crystal clear, and no doubt we are a monolithic economy. What that means is that we are very much dependent on the revenue from the oil and gas. At the last check, between 67 to 70% of our revenue come from the oil and gas related activities. In terms of forex, it's even in excess of 80%. A combination of forex and revenue determine the financial stability of every nation. But most importantly, the role of NNPC as a catalyst for national development and growth underpins the major important requirement for bearing a very secured energy security landscape. That would not have been possible without the role we are playing. And when you talk about the clarity that we are bringing, I think many a time there seems to be some misconception of what constitutes production of oil in Nigeria. There are two sets of numbers that we bring. One is for the purpose of OPEC and OPEC compliance. That deal with dry crude a lot. Only dry crude. What that means is that only hydrocarbon that has been properly classified based on its assay as crude oil, dry crude. And that's the one that we owe responsibility to meet our quota. However, for the purpose of our revenue computation, whether in terms of royalty, taxes, or even the profit, or the equity barrel that we need to take, we look at total liquid as the total production, which means it is the dry crudes for which we are obligated to comply with our own quota under OPEC, and then the condensate, which is also liquid. Many instances, this condensate and the crude are commingled together. So the total volume that we normally report is our total liquid production, which loosely Nigerians would call it oil. What you see many a times is that when our regulator brought about dry crude number for the purpose of OPEC, or OPEC reported our barrels, like just recently your television reported what OPEC said, that our August number has moved to 1.35 million barrels. What that means is that that's dry crude. For you to be able to know the total liquid hydrocarbon production of Nigeria, you need to add that 1.35 million barrel with our total condensate production, which stand today somewhere in the neighborhood of 300,000 barrels. So if you really want to report our total production, you need to take the dry crude number, add it to the condensate, and you will see that we are wobbling around 1.65, 1.7. But what you normally will take from OPEC is only dry crude oil alone. And if there's anything we want you to help us enlighten the audience, is the simple fact that anytime NNPC report total production, they are talking about total liquid. Anytime NURPC brings about total production, they're talking about total liquid. And And that number is different from what we submit to OPEC because condensate is not under OPEC restriction.
To help us understand the PIA, some elements of the PIA, especially as it concerns the recent agreement or partnership that was struck between NNPC Limited and Chevron.
What the law does under Section 92 is to provide for any licensing holder to voluntarily convert to take advantage of the new law. So what we did with Chevron was basically to take that advantage. For us to be able to enjoy that, we did everything that we needed to do under the law to comply with the law. And in compliance with the law, particularly in a non-operating joint venture, collaboration matters. And that's strong collaboration between NUIMS as a non-operating partner on behalf of NNPC and Chevron as operating partner requires significant level of alignment. And that close working relationship made us to be successful in meeting all the requirements for us to combat. That conversion means that today, the NNPC Chevron joint venture is positioned to be more profitable. It's positioned to go ahead and do its business with confidence in order to generate more value for its shareholders. Most importantly, it creates a properly kept licenses that are up to date, that have gone through regulatory compliance checklist, and therefore it is an unencumbered asset. With that, investment can now happen without any restriction, and that incentive to invest is the expectation that is going to create more production.
What is the true position of the IOCs as regard these stories around divestment, leaving the country, not finding conducive environment, especially the troubles from, so to speak, from the communities?
Well, I can confirm with you with all certainty that all our upstream-related regulators are now business enablers. The NURPP, for example, has never been as friendly as it is today. And that was why you can see it as evidence that the combined collaboration between the operating partner Chevron, the non-operating partner and investor NNPCL Limited, and the regulator worked through a very stringent requirement for compliance. And we are able to achieve that in record time. And today we have our licenses now converted from 5 OMLs to 26 PMLs. That is unprecedented by any benchmark. Second, when you look at it from NCDMB perspective, we're getting more and more collaborative response in a very speedy manner. Our operators, together with us, we're engaging with them closely. The combined, what I call current situation by our regulators clearly is providing additional level of confidence. You spoke about the community. Best practice as a reasonable, prudent operator, Chevron in particular, supported by the non-operating partner NUIMS, considered community as very crucial to our business.
Feel free to tell us if there are more investments also happening alongside that may not have been raised in the course of my questioning in this interview. Are there other investments going on that may suggest growth for Nigeria?
All what we are doing basically, and how are we partnering with our operating partners, is that we're wearing bifocal lenses. And what does that mean? We are doing whatever we can do to exploit to the fullest, optimally, the investment we have so far made across our production landscape. Second, we are also working hard with our partner to explore new opportunity, new horizon that we can invest in. That was slowed down because of uncertainty and the ambiguity around lack of clarity around the fiscal system. That has been eliminated now. We have also successfully mitigated the security challenges. And what that means is that we now have a green pathway towards making sure that we invest and benefit from those investments.
Fuel of choice. And for those who pay a little more attention to how processes work and how this industry works, CNG, if you work it backward in terms of the value chain, will mean that the feedstock natural gas has to be available. And if more Nigerians, for instance, sign in and sign on to this fuel of choice, which is CNG, are you suggesting that we are making the right investment progress to make sure that the feedstock, which is the natural gas that eventually leads into value chain into CNG, isn't going to be a problem when a lot of people sign on and are demanding heavily for CNG as the fuel of choice?
So, compressed natural gas business is a value chain. And because it is a value chain, it starts obviously from where you source the gas, to how you process the gas, to how you package the gas, to how you eventually transport and deliver this gas to the consumers. You have to have this value chain synchronized properly in order for them to deliver on their mandate, on their objectives. What we have seen is the greater interest or increasing interest on CNG business, and demand for gas obviously is showing up. We in the upstream space, we are waking up to that occasion. We are having more and more gas. I don't think there's any CNG company that has insufficiency of gas, absolutely no. But we also noted that the development of the midstream and the downstream component of CNG requires some time to mature. And that maturity matrix or maturity funnel is far behind the gas production.
So there you have it, understanding some of those details on the production, crude production, and some of those joint ventures which we hear the NNPC do sign up, and how it will affect revenue and crude production or crude availability in the country. That was it being done by Olu Phillips. Now, I think we can do a little bit of the market for just a second or so. Yeah, so we have the market closed yesterday in the positive. We do know that the oil and gas, yesterday was a very busy day for the market. We saw the flour mill delisting news. We saw it move in the market. We saw the Seplat also, and Exxon and Mobil also moving the market. So we see that the market gained 0.42%. Equities cap was 56.88. If we could see the sectors, okay, volume was mixed, the only values stood out. Let's see the sectors. I think the figures, yeah, there you have it. The figures lost yesterday. Consumer goods and industrial goods were in the green. And there you have that news with Seplat that moved the oil and gas counter. That was a major driver of the market yesterday, 3.27%. To give you fresh numbers, intraday numbers, that'll be at 1 p.m. Business Incorporated. Laddie Williams will be here with Aniti Edit. For now, let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studio.
A gathering of leaders of various civil society organizations who have worked in the electoral space in Nigeria. They are here to make public presentation of recommendations for electoral reforms as the National Assembly prepares for another round of amendments to the existing electoral laws.
The memorandum we present today focuses on three core pillars of the electoral legal framework for the conduct of elections: the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, the Electoral Act 2022, and INEC regulations and guidelines for elections. These proposals aim to strengthen the independence of INEC, improve the processes for electoral adjudication, and refine key constitutional provisions to ensure fairness, transparency, and inclusivity in our electoral process.
The group is recommending 16 priority areas for the National Assembly to look into. These include the recommendation for the unbundling of INEC, the establishment of Electoral Offences Commission, political party reforms, and diaspora voting.
Play a vital role in strengthening Nigeria's democracy.
The group also speak on the need for the National Assembly to consider reforms around election results management process and election adjudication.
I think the point about collation of results have been tackled. It's contained in the memo. What needs to be done? We need greater transparency, in our results collation process, even if it means subjecting it to some sort of independent audit of the of the results process is critical. In this memo, we also have provisions around how to strengthen the election adjudication process. And more importantly, we've advanced detailed recommendations on issues relating to the timelines for concluding election disputes. We also look at the need for the courts to, in the course of addressing or resolving electoral disputes, be guided by certain democratic values and principles.
The group hopes to pass the documents to the National Assembly to serve as a crucial resource as the lawmakers embark on a fresh electoral reform exercise.
To the National Assembly so that
All right, well, we have to start that conversation right now, and it's got to do with the elections and civil society organizations. Recently, we got a very interesting write-up, really, let's put it that way, from the All Progressives Congress, criticizing civil society organizations. In fact, particularly Yaga Africa, whose director you saw there, Mr. Samson Itodo, on that report, accusing them of not knowing what their boundaries are. Are they crossing the line? And these recommendations that have been made, by these civil society organizations that we saw in that report, they're going to move that to the National Assembly, we hear. What sort of results can they get from that? It's not the first time they've sent this sort of thing. So what's the outcome? What improvements have we had in our electoral process since then? Well, join us right now to answer these and more questions. We have Mr. Victor Giwa, who's an election observer. He's joining us here in the Abuja studios. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Last time I saw you was in Edo.
Yeah, I was in it.
How was it?
Yeah, it was fine. I was one of the INEC accredited observers.
Yes.
I observed with my team the elections. I was at the coalition center. So I saw it all from the beginning to the end of the process, so that we can have a full grip of what really happened.
An overview of that process in your mind. Can we hear what your thoughts are personally?
Yeah.
Before we get into civil society.
Okay, yeah. So firstly, it was supposed to be a very fair process. I was happy with what I saw from the beginning of the exercise. Of course, from 8:30 when it was supposed to start, of course, a lot of the polling units did not open us at that time. Then towards the end, in each of the polling units, where the counting of the votes and recording of the vote and uploading of the results to the IRF, I was happy because the impression we had before the election on that day was this issue of violence. There's going to be violence based on the vitriolics coming from the politicians, tension, the whole environment was heated up. But we saw little, or I didn't, there was no report from my own observers, about 40 of them that were sent to to the 18 local governments of any sort. So I was really happy. Unfortunately, that is my state. So I was excited that, oh, the Edo people have come out, But it was just after the collection of results at the unit level, then we started hearing about, issues of coalition at the local government level. And of course, getting to the coalition center, the final result, I just felt that there were a lot of things that went wrong that was supposed to have been addressed.
One of the things that really stood out for many of us from this election was vote buying. In fact, we heard the Labour Party candidate, the governorship candidate for the Labour Party, Mr. Olumide Apata, yesterday, I think it was on PoliticsToday, where he said, look, we basically went into this process. We went into a gunfight with a penknife. That's what he said. He said we went into a gunfight with a penknife, and we didn't have the money. But he instructively said, even if we did, we wouldn't have been vote buying.
Yeah,
but it does feed into the narrative that we've gotten about the elections in Edo. It was willing buyer, willing seller. In fact, those were his words: willing buyer, willing seller. So everyone just came there to make some money, made some money, and left.
No, well,
He even said people from his party. He was specific. He said people from my party did this. They went and they sold their votes, collected money, and left.
Well, there was issue of vote buying, but I don't see it as a major issue in this election.
Okay.
No.
You're the second person to say that.
Yes, I've not. Yeah, I've been observing election for the past 15 years. So I will say that I'm a lawyer. I belong to a civil society organization.
Yeah.
I can put myself as an election expert. So from what we have seen in the past compared to what happened in the Edo election, the issue of vote buying, if amongst 1 to 5, I don't think it will be 4.
What was the biggest issue for you?
The biggest issue is the wrong collation of results and the militarization of the process. Yeah, because the heavy amount of security and security interference with the process. To me, that is the major issue. So whether people, we were at the polling unit, we knew that somehow people seem to come into the polling unit with the intention to vote and maybe be compensated for it with any form. But if you look at the electoral process itself, from the basis of campaign to where you start voting, you cannot demonetize money from the politics. People go into elections, within your campaign, you tell them, you give them money, you buy things for them. That is where the monetization starts. So Nigerians and the voters, of course, because of that level of intelligence and because of the failure of leadership and governance, people see that opportunity as, this is one time that we think that maybe we will just get for coming to exercise. Of course, wrongly as it were, but it's something they do in this particular instance, except in very remote cases where you see it brazenly. But you see people, you will know that somebody voted, and so one of the agents will say, have you voted? Okay, go that way. Maybe he's telling you, go that way to collect, something and all that. But again, how are you sure that the person who voted, which is a secret process, the thing is a closed system. It is not, you don't show your ballot paper. INEC has been able to provide, laws on modalities where you don't have to, unlike what they were doing before, where you go to the voting cubicle, you cast your vote, you snap it, and you show it to the agent that, look, I vote for party A, and the party agent tells you, okay, good, you are entitled to your, that wasn't what we saw. It was just promissory. People say, okay, if you vote for me, I may give you A, and the person goes and somehow, so we can't really, say that is exactly what changed the narrative. If anybody says that person is not stating the facts.
The conversation around electronic voting also came up as a result of the Edo elections. People think if we had electronic voting in our system, maybe some of these irregularities that are being reported would not be as rampant. But we did hear former President Goodluck Jonathan say electronic voting is not the solution. Where do you stand on electronic voting and what it can do to Nigeria's electoral process?
You see, the truth of the matter is this. Nigerians seem to be confused about where the problem lies. I've listened to a lot of analysts and they say, technology, like Goodluck Jonathan have mentioned the fact that to him, this Edo election shows that technology could not solve our problem. But I can tell you where the problem is. The problem is in our willpower. Our politicians have refused to obey the laws. Politicians have chosen to breach the law brazenly. And I will give you an example. Let us take the issue of vote buying, Edo State, as a case study. If you accuse any political party of vote buying, who are the political parties are you accusing? Let us look at the two major parties, the PDP, the APC. Who are the APC? They are the government in power, presidency. Who are the PDP? They are the government in the state. Edo State is governed by a governor who is from PDP. Vote buying, is there an offense? Yes, it is. So why are you people involved in it? So you could see that the politicians themselves are breaching the law. So our problem is not the question of the law or what. If you bring the computer, I can tell you politicians can even steal the device. So the problem is not the law. The problem is not the device. Section 40, sub 2 of the Electoral Act says that the process of voting will commence by accreditation through the smart card reader, which in this case is the beavers. But I can submit to you that a lot of results were announced that did not pass through the beavers. Question, why didn't you use beavers? Section 40 says that when any process is done without the beavers, that place should be recorded as no election. How come there were elections in units that agents now came up to say, oh, we didn't use beavers? That is the question. Who are the people that are supposed to be in charge? Who should raise the flag? Candidates have their political agents in every unit. The language used by the Electoral Act is the candidate or his political agent. Every political agent, every candidate that participates in the election, they are supposed to have a candidate in that unit. Election is conducted at the unit. As a matter of fact, we have seen cases where people say, oh, it was at the collation center, they did whatever. If you undo your unit very well, election is conducted, you take your result sheet, which is you are entitled to as a political party agent or a candidate. You can correlate it to inside your party room and come back. You see, the Electoral Act, that's why I said it's not the issue of whether you're using device, whether those things could reduce the risk of corruption and compromise in the process. But let me tell you, a willing mind that is ready to compromise will bypass all the process. We abuse the law, we abuse the device, we compromise the device, we compromise officials to ensure that they want to arrive at what they intended to do.
In your view, the elections in Edo State, were they free, fair?
No, the result, the process was free, but the result was not fair.
Okay, so the process was free.
And I can tell you why I got to that point.
I want to be able to be clear on that.
Good.
So the process
was free. The result was not a fair result.
How so? How does that work?
Correct. The new Electoral Act tells us that you can have a fair process and a wrong result. How does it happen? During the collation of the result, somebody at the point of collation can just add and remove. And the law also made a provision under section 46, chapter 6, to say you can correct errors in the result.
So you think the results were manipulated?
Yes, I felt that the results were not corrected. The results were not correct.
APC wrote a letter to civil society organizations, Yaga Africa in particular. And I want to read part of what they said, and you tell me what you think. Alleging that results were manipulated without hard facts and figures, but based on some statistical guesswork, is clear disservice to the electoral process. Yaga Africa's report is a travesty, replete with methodological flaws, politicized observations, inconsistencies, inaccuracies, and calls its credibility into question. Election observer missions are not election management agencies and cannot usurp INEC's statutory authority as the sole election management body in Nigeria. Doing so will constitute a clear breach of the Electoral Act and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Correct. Now, the fact is that as observers, we have our limits.
You just said that the results were manipulated.
Yes, and that is part of the observation.
Yeah.
The observation is for you to say that the results were not correct.
Well,
so it is right for us to say.
Is that if you're saying that results were manipulated without hard facts, that you actually, well, not you, they were referring to Yaga Africa in particular.
Yeah.
But basically, as election observers, when you say something like the election results were manipulated, Do you have the hard facts to back that up?
Okay, good. I said that the results are not correct. And now when results are not correct, it might not necessarily mean they were manipulated. It could be error because they are figures. It could be error in calculation. It could be ignorance as a result of people collating, and it could be as a result of compromise. And the Electoral has contemplated that provision. And that is why it says under section 46 sub 6 that when during coalition of results, there are disputes as to the results, the returning officer has the right to verify. And how do you verify? It is provided in section 6. Look at the result that have been transmitted and look at what is recorded and now look at it together. That was the duty of the returning officer as at that time. Funny enough and good enough, in that coalition center I was there, and one of the first questions I put to one of the agents who was raising issue of, when they declare the result in each of the local government in the coalition center, he will say, this result is not correct. There was violation. I stood up as an observer. I said, look, I am aware of section 46 that says where there are errors, why not come with the particulars? And that is the failure of political party. When you are alleging error at the coalition center provides, and the law provides you to dispute an election result. Even INEC under section 46 and 40, it said even when the returning officer has declared results, INEC has the power within 7 days to determine whether or not the declaration made by the returning officer is based on the law or it was done voluntarily. Because the law also contemplates that there are situations where the result might not be correct. So I was telling one of the agents who was raising that point at the coalition said that it is not enough for you to say, they manipulated the result. We have agents in unit AB. The result you just declared, I have all the, for example, we have all the polling unit results in a local government. Haven't calculated it. The figure you are declaring that is in your IRF is not correct. What do? You present it to the returning officer. The law says he should verify with what was uploaded and what was recorded and come to his own conclusion to know whether or not the result was correct. Election does not end in the coalition center at the local government. The real part where the election ends is at the final coalition center in the coalition of results for the governorship. But most political party failed to follow it through. So when they got to the coalition center, they just made very alarming, bogus claim. But you need to come with particulars so that you can confront the returning officer that you cannot declare that result because that result is incorrect.
I want to be able to look at some of the demands made by civil society organizations before we get Ayo to join us. Ayo would have a few questions for you. But these demands, this reports by civil society that observe these elections, we've heard these kinds of recommendations before. I've heard this before, unbundling of INEC, establishment of Electoral Offences Commission. We've heard this before. Political party reform, diaspora voting, constituency delimitation, voter register and voter registration, women and youth, people with disabilities, political participation. These are things that we've heard over and over again. I want to be able to get from you, who is in civil society, some of the things that you've been demanding for that would give more credibility to Nigeria's electoral process. Over the years, you've been doing this for more than a decade. Has it yielded any results? Have there been any of the, what would you say were the major things that have yielded results that were demanded by civil society organizations when it comes to election reform?
Correct. We have demanded things like the use of technology. Okay. That is what saw beavers. We demanded use of ensuring there's a transparent process. That's what led to the IREV, that you can now upload results and see. So there have been some recommendations that have made that have been incorporated into the laws. But like I said earlier, the problem has never been, in short, let them make all the laws. In as much as they are not going to be angels, it will not be angels who will administer the law. We will come back to square one. So our major problem is who are the people who will enforce the law. The major problem is enforcement of that law. So if you have people who are not ready to enforce the law, we will never get out of this debacle. So it is not whether you are suggesting, look, we will continue to suggest till the kingdom come. Look at ordinary section 46, subsection 6 of the Electoral Act that gives the returning officer to verify. I was putting it to the return. He said, no, he just want to declare the result and get out. And why? He's a professor that came from the University of technology mina. You just want to declare the result, and like the word says, declare the result, and run away.
Well, let's get Ayo to weigh in here because I think he's been waiting to ask you a few questions. Go on, Ayo.
Thank you, Kayla. For me, the question we want to ask is whether or not the people are benefiting from this entire process. The issues you raise about, the process and everything. On the one hand, the percentage of people, at least you have a vague idea of the percentage of people that came out to vote, of 2.249 or thereabout voters that collected their PVCs this election. Less than 30%, according to available data, came out to vote. Less than 600,000 people came out to vote during this election. For you, what informed that extremely appalling low voter turnout? Is it that the political parties didn't do their jobs of educating their people? Is it that the electoral umpire didn't carry out enough voter education? Is it that the people are just apathetic? What exactly would you pin that problem on?
Good question. I will tell you, if Edo is my state, if I was in that state, I wouldn't have voted. If I was in that state as an indigenous of Edo State, within that circumstances, I wouldn't have also voted. Why? It was not worth it. You could see the prelude to the election. You could see the threats. You could see the shooting. You could see the issue of thuggery. You could see. So people, as a matter of fact, I came into the country on Thursday, and when I was going to the election, even some INEC officials were telling me, oh, do you want to go? You have to be careful. Oh, we have to be careful from what we are hearing from politicians. So the tension created by the politicians were enough to scare voters away. I mean, you are going to, perform your civil rights, and you need to see the military present.
But even that, if you remember, Mr. Giwa, just 1 second. If you would remember, you would know that over time, when we hear about all these threats of violence and all, there's always an anticlimax at the end of the day. In most cases, remember Ondo State, in the days of Ogbeni, Akeredolu, late Akeredolu, who said, look, all the political comments that people are making, they're what he called political gunshots. They don't kill anybody. So on the one hand, are those statements, as people say, but most of the time, from history, they never really affect anybody, because at the end of the day, it's always an anticlimax. The election will come and go. Most of the time, there is no violence.
Yeah, that is what really played out. At the end of the day, there was really, in quotes, no violence. But you see, I would not want to use my life as an experiment. And no Nigeria will want to do that. So that is why the first thing we need to do is to make sure, like I have been saying, is to make sure that the people who are saddled with the responsibility of ensuring that the laws are followed, follow it through. Making, heated statements, making words that are capable of resulting to threats and fear is an offense. They are all offenses under the Electoral Act. INEC should have called certain persons to order. Even the security agency should have invited some persons and say, my friend, you made a comment A and comment B. These are wrong. You don't have to do that. But when you see a situation where a minister comes on air or shoot anybody you see, because we have seen cases where you shoot people, we call it accidental discharge. When the person is gone, he's gone. So you see, and this is supposed to be a process that people should dance into the unit with excitement, with tea or coffee, and you give high five to your friend, and you go and cast your vote. But the impression you see, or you hear, or you feel is that you are going to have a battle to cast your vote. And so that was the major issue that had its sway on the psychology of the voters. And we were going around to ask why people did not come out, and they were telling us to. Then the last part of it, the reason why you have low turnout is because of bad leadership. They don't believe that their votes will count. And like we could see, a party is telling you that he won, and the other party, another party was declared as the winner. So the populace are saying that, look, if we take our time to go to that queue and cast our vote, in the final analysis, my vote will not count. My vote will not count. So why do I need to go there? And that is why you see people go there and ask for money, because they know even while they are casting their vote, at the end of the day, the vote will not count. So those are the major reasons why you see low turnout, during the Edo election.
I mean, Mr. Victor, listening to you, I know you mentioned earlier that vote buying wasn't, in your view, one of the major issues, but one of the problems that at least people like us who have to listen to these things all the time, one of the things we worry about is that poverty could be weaponized. And the poorer people get, the less morals they would have, the less convictions they would have. They would want to be able to make as much money as possible. So in many ways, it is one of the biggest fears when it comes to vote buying. I can't wait for 2027. Is the money going to increase? What's going to happen? It's something that we'll have to talk about later, me and you. We'll have that conversation after. But I want to thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
For being with us on Sunrise Daily. Mr. Victor Giwa, an election observer. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a look at some messages. Professor Imonoka and Festus Akimboewa, we can see both of your messages. I hear that we don't have enough time to take them. I apologize, and we'll take a look at your messages tomorrow. I give you my word. I want to thank you very much for being with us. It's Thursday. Have a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Megwa.
Good. Accountability will play out tomorrow morning. I'm holding you by that word. Amaya Makide, do have a productive day.